The House with Whispering Walls. When the Gromov family first saw the old house on the outskirts of the city, it seemed like an ideal place for a quiet life, away from the hustle and bustle. This house, built at the beginning of the 20th century, had long stood empty and abandoned. But even despite its age and obvious signs of time, there was something inviting about it. High ceilings, huge windows, surrounded by a dense garden, seemed to be the embodiment of a dream of a quiet and secluded life. Nikolai, the head of the family, decided that this was a great chance to start a new life. His wife Olga was also delighted with the idea of moving, and their two children, Masha and Kirill, were already imagining how they would play in the big house and explore its old rooms. The house was bought quickly and, surprisingly, at a fairly low price. The realtor, smiling slightly nervously, noted that it had its own charm, and perhaps that was why no one had dared to live in it until now. But this did not bother the Gromovs. For them, the house seemed like a find that could open a new chapter in their lives. The move went without any particular problems, and despite some difficulties with the renovation, the family quickly settled in. Soon the house became their cozy nest, and everything seemed to be going as well as possible. However, on the very first evening, when twilight enveloped the house, strange and inexplicable phenomena began. It all started with a quiet whisper. Olga noticed it first when she was cleaning the kitchen late in the evening. Her attention was drawn to a strange sound, as if someone was whispering something behind the wall. She froze, listened, but the house was quiet. She thought the sound might have come from the street, perhaps the wind. But as soon as she returned to her work, the whisper was repeated. "Who's there?" she asked, feeling the absurdity of her question, because she knew for sure that there was no one in the house except her and her family. The answer was an even quieter, more indistinct whisper. It was weak, barely perceptible, like someone speaking through thick walls. Olga came out of the kitchen slightly worried. She looked into the nursery where Masha and Kirill were already asleep, then returned to Nikolai's bedroom. "Did you hear something?" she asked, but Nikolai only shrugged. "No, nothing." Did something happen? Olga decided that it was just her tired imagination. But when they went to bed, the strange feeling that the house held something more than it seemed at first glance did not leave her. The next day, the family continued to decorate the house. Kirill and Masha were especially excited and ran around the rooms, looking at the old wallpaper, large windows, and mysterious corners of the house. Masha, who was older, noticed that the walls in one of the rooms seemed a little strange. "Mom, why are the walls here so rough?" she asked, running her hand over the old wallpaper in the hallway. Olga looked at the walls and noticed that they really felt strange to the touch, uneven and covered with small cracks. It wasn't like old wallpaper, but rather as if the walls themselves were breathing. "It's probably just the signs of old age, dear," Olga replied, not attaching much importance to it. "We'll have to do some repairs a little later." But in the evening, it all happened again. The whispers came through the house again. This time, they were a little louder and more distinct. Olga couldn't make out the words, but she could definitely hear someone talking behind the walls, as if the voices were trying to break through a thick layer of old brick and plaster. She decided to discuss this with Nikolai. "Are you sure it couldn't be the wind or something with the pipes? Maybe there are cracks in the house?" she asked, feeling a growing sense of unease. Nikolai also began to pay attention to strange sounds. They became more obvious and almost constant. This was especially noticeable at night, when the house was plunged into silence and the whisper became the main sound that broke this silence. It came from everywhere, from behind the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and became more and more distinct. One night, When everyone had already gone to bed, Nikolai heard a loud, clear whisper right next to his bed. The words were barely audible, but he realized that they were not just random sounds. "Help! Me!" He sat up abruptly in bed, looking around. The room was empty, but the feeling of someone else's presence did not leave him. "Olga, did you hear?" he asked quietly, trying not to wake the children. Olga opened her eyes and also froze, listening. But now it was quiet. "What was that?" she whispered, feeling her heart begin to beat faster. "I don't know, but it was too real," Nikolai replied, as if someone was calling for help. The next day, the family began to notice more and more strange phenomena. When Masha was playing in her room, she suddenly heard someone singing quietly behind the wall. The song was melodic, but somehow dark and ancient, as if it was sung by a long-forgotten soul. She called her mother. "Mom, there's someone singing here," she said, clutching the toy in her hands and looking warily at the wall. Olga listened, but heard nothing. However, the sight of her daughter, who was clearly frightened, made her think. She stroked Masha's head and calmed her down, but she herself could not shake off the thought that something was wrong here. Over the next few weeks, the whispers and strange sounds grew louder. Sometimes at night, it seemed as if the walls were literally breathing, emitting unintelligible voices. One night, Olga woke up in the middle of the night and heard a conversation, as if several people were arguing somewhere in the depths of the house. But when she went to check, everything was quiet. Nikolai, who was beginning to worry about his family, decided to reach out to locals to find out if there was anything they had missed when they bought the house. He went to the local library and found old records about the house. What he found shocked him. This house had a long and dark history. It turned out that at the beginning of the 20th century, a family lived in the house, but all of its members disappeared under mysterious circumstances. None of them were ever found, but neighbors said that before they disappeared, strange sounds were heard in the house, whispers and screams. After that, the house changed hands several times, but no family stayed in it for long. Nikolai returned home with an icy chill in his chest. He knew this wasn't just a home. This place held something dark, something that wasn't going to let them go. But when he told Olga everything, she couldn't believe her ears. "You mean we live in a house where people disappeared? And now we hear their voices?" Her voice trembled with fear. "I don't know what's going on, but I feel like it's not a coincidence. These whispers. It's like they want to tell us something. They're calling us." That night, the whispers became almost unbearable. They weren't just behind the walls, they were everywhere. The house seemed to come alive. The walls, the floors, even the air in the rooms. Everything was filled with quiet voices, as if dozens of people were talking at once, drowning out each other. Masha woke up in the middle of the night and saw a shadow standing by her bed. It was the figure of a man, but his face was blurry, as if it was dissolving into thin air. He stood motionless, but his eyes were looking straight at her. Masha froze, paralyzed by fear. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't make a sound. The figure leaned towards her and whispered, "Help us." These words echoed throughout the room, and Masha finally screamed.